What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Yeti Express DFS podcast presented to you by Draft Dashboard. Remember, you can try out all the tools that I use in this video 30 days for $1 by clicking my link in the description below. We'll give you an access to the cheat sheet real quick here. Here's the cheat sheet for this week. Remember, the players that are in red are part of my Watch Players tab, and we'll go over that in just 1 minute here. But before we do that, we'll give a review from last week and how we did. And before we get into the plays, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos that we post. So here's the review of this last weekend. In our mini max, we put 100 entries into the 50 cent. So $50 in, 94 out. We'll look at some of our best lineups, let you know how we did and where we missed. We had a lot of Aaron Rodgers. I had about 30% of Aaron Rodgers. I just love the spot. Wide receivers from the Rams were really my letdown. This is my best lineup, took 502nd. But the Rams wide receivers just didn't get it done for us this past week. Alrighty, we'll get into this week's picks. Before we do that, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. That really helps me out. First play I want to talk about is Russell Wilson. Projected ownership is 16% against Atlanta. Listen, Atlanta's dead last in the NFL against the pass. 31st ranked defense overall. He's priced up, but I'm willing to pay for him. Next up, we have Deshaun Watson against Oakland. Watson's getting pretty expensive, 9% projected ownership, but Oakland just got torched by Aaron Rodgers last week, so I think he's in play again. Deshaun Watson, that is. Next up, I have Jared Goff against Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati 28th against the pass. Not very good. 26 defense overall. Jared Goff, 7% projected ownership. I like to find people in good matchups and exploit them. And what I do when I'm putting all these plays that I'm talking about, these are just players that I'm going to include in my 100 lineups. So I mass generate lineups using an optimizer. I'll show you that at the end of the video. But this is how I do it. So I'll recommend players at each position, and we'll go from there. Next up, I have Josh Allen against Philly, 2% projected ownership. Philly's defense just got awful against the pass, 21st, 25th. They've just been torched lately. They've had cornerback injuries. Pretty good spot for Josh Allen. Next up, I have Matt Stafford against the Giants. 22nd pass defense, 24th defense overall are the Giants. Matthew Stafford's in a pretty good spot. Next up, I have Ryan Tannehill, 3% projected ownership. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 26th against the pass, 27th defense overall, and Tannehill last week was 23 of 29, so he's performing. Got to include him. Super cheap price tag, $5,100. I'll probably have quite a bit of Tannehill this week. Next up, I have Matt Ryan against Seattle. Seattle's defense, in my opinion, isn't as good as people think it is. 20th against the pass. Matt Ryan will be at home. Barring injury, this isn't one to keep an eye on. He left a game with an ankle injury, so we'll have to wait and see if he's going to play in this one. But I do have interest in Matt Ryan. And that was it for quarterbacks for me. Running backs, first up, Saquon Barkley against the Detroit Lions, 30th against the run, 28th defense overall, 8,900. I'll take a shot on Saquon, 17 points in his first game back. Next up, I have Mr. Volume, Leonard Fournette, 26th run defense for the Jets, 16th defense overall. Leonard Fournette just touches the ball like 30 to 35 times a game. He's a workhorse, and he's a pretty damn good one. Look at his game log, 15, 29, 26, 17, 19. He's just very consistent and a high-volume back. Next, I have Chris Carson from the Seattle Seahawks, 20% projected ownership. Atlanta is 20th against the run, 31st worst defense in the NFL. So I think we can see Chris Carson maybe get in the end zone here. I do like the passing side more, but I will include Chris Carson this week. Next up is a guy I talk about every single week. Le'Veon Bell. Waiting for that breakout game. 6,900, 15% projected ownership. Pretty good matchup here against Jacksonville. He has not had a breakout game yet this year. I just don't want to miss it when he does, because when he does, he'll go for 40 and he'll be low owned. So I'm going to include Le'Veon Bell, 21st rush defense for Jacksonville. So we're going to include him. Next up, I have Sony Michel against Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns pretty bad against the run, 27th in the NFL. Sony Michel is the goal line guy. I don't care what you say about Brandon Bolden and James White. They're not going to be getting the ball at the goal line. Bolden stole a couple touchdowns a week ago, but that was just more of a penalty because Michel fumbled a game, and then they gave the stuff to Bolden. But that's not something that's going to be going forward. That's not going to be an issue. One player I want to talk about is Christian McCaffrey. I am excluding him from all 100 of my lineups this week. He is the best running back in the entire NFL. Do not get me wrong. $9,200 going against the second best defense in the NFL, second best against the run. The 49ers are no joke up front. I want to make sure that I make that clear. I've said this before and it's burned me, but this week, no Christian McCaffrey for me. Next up, I have Latavius Murray against Arizona. Arizona is a team that really struggles against the air. They're okay on the run, but I think we could see New Orleans score in the 30s, and Latavius Murray's, in my opinion, is almost a lock for a touchdown. So I'm going to include him at just 5,800, 10% projected ownership. Wide receivers. First guy up. I mention him every single week. He is the Le'Veon Bell of the wide receiver position, and that is DeAndre Hopkins. He's starting to come into his own now, though. Super good matchup against Oakland, 31st against the pass, 30th defense overall, 23% projected ownership, super smash spot for DeAndre Hopkins. This could finally be the week that we need from him. Next up, I have Michael Thomas going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who rank 17th against the pass and 29th defense overall. Michael Thomas is just a PPR machine, and when you're playing on DraftKings, that means more. He is priced up now. He was 6,300 at one point this year, and we smashed him that week too. But even at 8K, I'm still going to consider him this week. Next up, I have Tyler Lockett, 13% projected ownership against those Arizona Cardinals, who are 28th against wide receiver position in daily fantasy points allowed. Tyler Lockett going to connect him up with Russell Wilson. Next up, I have Julian Edelman, 8% projected ownership. They just don't have enough bodies in this game. I expect this game to be a little closer. This is going to be a challenge for the New England Patriots. They haven't played anybody, don't forget that. And I don't know if Sanu will be a part of the team this week, but they just don't have a lot of bodies outside of Edelman and the running game to play in a close game without having Edelman have a pretty big game. Next up, I have Jaron Brown against the Philly secondary. That is 32nd against wide receivers. John Brown is the only option for Josh Allen to throw to. Next up, I have Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, 2% projected ownership against the New York Giants. He caught 4 touchdowns last week. I think he had like 100 yards. Starting to kind of come into his own here. Marvin Jones, good spot, decent price. I'm willing to take a shot on him again. Next up, I have Corey Davis. He was Tannehill's guy last week, and at only 2% projected ownership against Tampa Bay, who's god-awful against the pass. I think it makes a lot of sense to pair up Corey Davis with Ryan Tannehill. Next up, I have Julio Jones. Listen, you see this red mark by Julio Jones saying that Seattle is 8th against the pass or against wide receivers. They're not that good against the pass though, and Julio Jones is going to catch the ball a lot. I would be very surprised if he has anything less than 20 points in this game. Expect him to have 13 catches, maybe 120 yards and a touchdown. This guy's going to have a big game. Just put him in your lineups. Next up, I have Kenny Golladay, 14% projected ownership at 6,400 against the Giants. We just talked about the Giants with Marvin Jones Jr., and Kenny Golladay is a boomer bust play. You see 28, 23, 20 and then you see a 3.7 and a 3.0. So just whether or not you pick the right guy in this game, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, one of them's going to go off, so we're going to include both of them. Next up, I have Robert Woods against Cincinnati. Cincinnati is actually pretty good against the wide receiver position, but as a defense as a whole, they are 26th. Robert Woods is the PPR guy, so he's the guy that catches the ball with the most volume. If he can finally find the end zone, he's going to pay off that $6,300 price tag. Brandon Cooks is the home run hitter. We talk about these guys almost every week. Decent matchup. Cooks has got a lot of speed, and I fully expect this game to not even be close. Just hoping to get a touchdown or two from one of these wide receivers. Calvin Ridley, again, I talked about Seattle's secondary. Not that good, man. I don't care what anybody says. Their defense isn't that good, so I'm going to include Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, both in my player pools this week. Nobody else in the dumpster down here. Next up, I have Austin Hooper. We're in the tight ends now, 12% projected ownership against Seattle. Like I said, Seattle's not that good of a defense, 28th against tight ends, and Hooper's been super consistent, super solid. So I'll obviously have some of him. Evan Ingram, if he plays, smash spot here. He's only 5,300. He should be like 6,800, so he's just way underpriced against Detroit. He had 2 bad weeks in a row, so maybe that's why his price finally came down, but he's in a super good spot. Just include him. My favorite play of the week, last week, if you watched my video, my call of the week was Jimmy Graham for 20 DK points. I think he ended up with 16.4, had the fire next to his name, and was in a ton of my lineups and paid me well, as you guys saw at the beginning of this video. This week, my call of the week is Zach Ertz will catch a touchdown. I don't know about the yardage and the volume, but he will be in the end zone, maybe once, maybe twice. Zach Ertz is my tight end this week that I am in love with. Defenses, I don't really like to talk about the defenses a whole lot. I kind of include them if they're in good spots, and I get rid of them if they're not. So these guys at the bottom, I just exclude them out of my player pools. I'll include the Texans this week, though. I just exclude a lot of these guys out of my player pools, and then I watch the ones that I think are in an okay spot. So like the Eagles, Lions, Colts, Niners, not a huge fan of, but we'll include them. Seahawks, we're not including. I don't want the Bills this week. Titans, I don't want. And we can watch the rest of these guys. So now what I do with that is I try to make a lineup on FanDuel and DraftKings, and then we will go from there, and we'll talk about the mass lineup generator. First of all, quarterback. This is more of a cash game build than it is going to be a tournament build. But I want to get let's get some expensive guys in here. I'll get Corey Davis. Defense that I like this week. Chargers against Chicago. You got to cut 1,000. John Brown's in a pretty good spot. Marvin Jones, we could probably get off of him. Not a whole lot of value down there. I think we have to play Saquon with. We'll go Carson. It gives us 900 to spend up on. Get off Marvin. I want to include Julio. I don't think he's going to be as high owned as Hopkins, but I do want to include him. Can we cut enough? Something like this, D.D. Westbrook. So something like this could be a cash build here. Ryan Tannehill, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, John Brown, Corey Davis, Julio Jones, Evan Ingram, D.D. Westbrook, Chargers defense. FanDuel. I'm not going to be playing Kyle Allen against San Francisco. DraftKings or FanDuel. Tannehill's cheap, man. Let's go Watson over here. We'll go Watson and Hopkins. Edelman, we like it. Hooper's a little spendy for me, but I'm going to stick with my call of the week, Zach Ertz. Julio Jones, Latavius Murray, Sony Michel. I like this on FanDuel. Deshaun Watson, Sony Michel, Latavius Murray, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Marvin Jones, Zach Ertz, Julian Edelman, and Jacksonville defense or Jets defense. Get up to the Broncos if you want them against Indy. Something like that on DraftKings or on FanDuel again. Sorry, I play on DraftKings a lot. I like that quite a bit. Get off Marvin Jones again if we wanted to. And get Alshon. Something like that looks pretty solid to me. I could play that. Anyways, there's that. We'll show you the mass lineup generator. We'll do it on DraftKings. We'll do 100 lineups, then 1,000. Randomness low, none, because I trust my exposures. Mass exposure, 40% per player. Generate lineups. So this usually takes a minute or two, but I must have cleared my watch players tab. Anyways, I use a mass lineup generator, and I'll show you. If you have any questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me on how to use it. I accidentally just cleared my watch players tab, so I have nobody in there. So I'm not going to go through and make the whole thing again, but just so you guys know, I do this. I use this for my 100 lineups. I take all that information that I just plugged into the system, and I run it through a generator, setting your exposures how you want it. You could say, hey, I really like one player. I want 75. I want 100. You know, if you're going to make 100 lineups and you want 100% of one guy, you can make it happen. If you want 40%, you can make it happen. Anyways, thanks for stopping by, guys. Good luck this week. Hope we find another winning week, and win-win, baby.